Today I want to talk about something I keep seeing more and more of in new scripts these days. And honestly, it is hurting writers a lot more than it's helping. Weak character introductions. And the worst part is, most writers don't even realize that they're doing it. I'm Neil Chase, author of Iron Dogs, writer-director of the thriller features Spin the Wheel and Contamination. And I want to break down 5 ways to improve character introductions in your script. Now, this is really important because this is the moment when the audience first meets your character. It's at this moment that they decide if this character is worth following for the rest of the story. So if you don't want to lose your audience before they get to any of the good stuff, let's get right into it. And stay tuned to the end because I have a quick test you can do for every character you've introduced. That's quick, easy, and will tell you right away if your character introduction is bang on or if it needs work. But first, click like and subscribe to see more writing tips just like this, and then grab your popcorn. Let's get started. Now, I've been seeing this pop up more and more through my screenplay coverage, and I'll be honest, it's becoming a major problem. I'll be reading a new script, and the central characters will show up for the first time, and the introduction will be something like Jane, 25, in a t-shirt and jeans, and that's it. No sense of who she is, no energy, no personality, or even a feeling that this is a real person with an actual life. Just age, gender, and generic clothing. And what makes it worse is one client even told me that he had been told straight up by so-called professionals to make his character descriptions as generic as possible so that he wouldn't, quote, do the casting director's job for them. Now, I don't know who's telling writers this, but it's idiotic, and it has to stop. I'm not joking when I say it's absolutely the wrong lesson on every level. You want to know why? Because it conflates physical description with characterization. See, one tells you what a person looks like. The other tells you who they are. Those are not the same thing. So just because you describe a character does not mean you're trying to cast the role. No, you're trying to introduce a human being in a way that makes the reader feel like they've met someone real. That means you need more than a t-shirt and jeans. And how do you do that? Well, let's start with the easiest step first. Introduce the character before their dialogue. 99% of the time, the reader should know who is speaking before they speak. See, that way the dialogue has context. I mean, the exception, of course, is when the identity or appearance of the character is meant to be a surprise. Then you can hold it back on purpose. But outside of that, it helps to let us meet the person first. And if you can do it through action, then it's even better. Perfect example of this is Darth Vader in Star Wars. Here's how it's described in the screenplay. The awesome, 7-foot-tall Dark Lord of the Sith makes his way into the blinding light of the main passageway. This is Darth Vader, right hand of the Emperor. His face is obscured by his flowing black robes and grotesque breath mask, which stands out next to the fascist white armored suits of the Imperial stormtroopers. Everyone instinctively backs away from the imposing warrior, and a deathly quiet sweeps through the rebel troops. Several of the rebel troops break and run in a frenzied panic. Wow, right? He doesn't just start talking out of nowhere. There is buildup. Frightened soldiers aiming their blasters at a blocked door, just waiting for something or someone to break through. Then chaos, smoke, blaster fire, death, stormtroopers in white armor pouring into the hallway, driving the defenders back. And just before the fighting dies down, Vader steps through the smoke. He is introduced like an event. The image comes first, the presence comes first, the intimidation comes first. By the time he speaks, the reader and the audience already understand the force of the person delivering those lines. See, that matters because dialogue does not exist in a vacuum. It is shaped by who is saying it. And when writers skip that introduction and go straight to dialogue, well, they rob the line of personality, tension, and tone. So let the reader meet the character before they hear them, unless withholding that information is the point. The setup is what gives the dialogue so much power. All right, next, lead with personality. To me, this is really the heart of the whole thing. When you introduce a character, the most important question shouldn't be, hey, what color is their shirt? No, it's what kind of person is this? Are they commanding, meek, angry, calm, charming, nervous, arrogant, guarded, curious, exhausted, dangerous, or some combination of all of those. Personality is what makes a character feel specific. Take Bear in Obsession. Here's how the script introduces him. Bear, 25, slouches on the couch. A depressed existence. He's decent looking but lacks self-confidence. He fixates on a pivotal scene from a classic romance film on a small TV. It echoes, adding an eerie ambiance to the room. Bear's eyes tell the story of a man who yearns for love, but enjoys wallowing in his disappointments. He looks down at the ground in front of him and sighs. In the center of a room, a dead cat lies where the coffee table should be. Its body is stiff, and the grease from its hair has begun to seep into the carpet, causing it to smell. Bear takes a deep breath and finally stands up. Part of why he works is that he does not feel like a generic, awkward, nice guy. The movie knows exactly what kind of person he is. Insecure, passive, emotionally blocked, uncomfortable in his own skin, and stuck in a fantasy version of what he wants. His introduction shows a character who's lost, and not even his pet, dead and rotting at his feet, is enough to snap him out of his doldrum. That makes the story stronger because the character feels defined right from the start. So lead with the thing that tells us who this person is inside. When it comes to scripts, that creates the mental picture way faster than some generic physical details ever will. And if you want to get a sense of your character before you write them into your script, well, I've created a free character development workbook made for this exact reason. And if you're a writer or producer working on an original genre script and you want help with it on any level, check out my screenplay coverage and coaching calls for personalized one-on-one help. No AI, 100% me. Links for all of these are in the description below. Okay, that brings us to tip number 3. Show us the situation they're in. A strong introduction often gets even stronger when it includes the situation the character is in when we first meet them. And I'm not talking about backstory or biography, I mean the present moment. A character's reaction to a situation tells us far more than some neutral description. Sure, we could look at Darth Vader again just to make this point, just like we did with the first tip, but let's go in a quieter direction. With someone equally as dangerous, Achilles in Troy. Here's how the script sets it up. The boy pauses for a moment inside the tent, eyes adjusting to the dim light. Evidently last night was a wild party. Jugs of wine are everywhere and the remains of a large feast. Sleeping on a fur rug are 2 naked women and 1 naked man, tanned arms and legs entwined. The boy sidesteps shards of a broken jug. He bends to tap the sleeping man's shoulder. Before his fingers make contact, a hand shoots out, grabs his wrist, and pulls him to the rug. The boy finds himself flat on his back with a dagger to his throat. Achilles. Shh. The boy stares into the eyes of Achilles, 30, who seems to have barely moved. Somehow he managed to seize the boy and put a knife to his throat without waking the women. Achilles, whispering, I was having a good dream. A very good dream. The boy nods, dumb with fear. Achilles has the lean, efficient physique of a boxer. His face and body are dark from a summer spent in the sun. What defines him when we meet him is not just that he's this great warrior. Before we even get to the physical, the tanned body of a boxer, it's the situation and how he moves inside it that's described. He's dead to the world, more likely hungover or still drunk, yet he strikes faster than this boy can process, and he's in such full control that he doesn't even open his eyes to know that his blade hasn't touched the boy's exposed throat. This alone tells us that he's skilled and strong and agile. He's as quick and dangerous as a viper. But, as we find out in the very next scene, when he's facing an enemy twice his size, he's also calm when others are tense, almost detached where others are emotional. He carries supreme confidence because he knows exactly who he is in this world, and because he knows, we know. That's character through situation. This is one reason I always tell writers to think less in terms of describing a person while they're standing still, and more in terms of describing a person through action, or more to the point, through pressure. How do they enter a room? What do they do first? What bothers them? What are they trying to hide? What are they trying to project? Use the first moment of contact to show the reader how this person behaves in context. If they're brave, well then show them being brave in some way rather than just a single word saying that they are. A reaction tells us more than some list of traits ever will, because we see it for ourselves. Number 4, use physical details only when they matter. This is where some newer writers swing too hard in the other direction. They'll default to generic physical descriptions because they don't really know the character yet. See, the plot came first, the person came second, and now the introduction is just this placeholder that never really gets upgraded. The character becomes interchangeable, just another body moving through the beats that the writer has already planned. That's backwards. As we've already established, you should know the character first, and once you know them, their personalities, strengths, weaknesses, quirks, fears, posture, rhythm, energy, well then the plot starts growing out of them instead of just dragging a generic lead from one scene to the next. And yes, generic physical descriptions are weak, but that does not mean physical details have no value at all. They absolutely do, when they matter. If the character has distinctive features such as scars, an eye patch, a broken nose, a cast on their leg, unusual body size, either too big or too small, a unique wardrobe choice, well, then it can and should be part of the intro, because now it helps define that person. For example, here's how Hannibal Lecter is first introduced in The Silence of the Lambs. Dr. Hannibal Lecter is lounging on his bunk, in white pajamas, reading an Italian Vogue. He turns, considers her. A face so long out of the sun, it seems almost bleached, except for the glittering eyes and the wet red mouth. He rises smoothly, crossing to stand before her, the gracious host. His voice is cultured, soft. Dr. Lecter, good morning. Ooh, see? Yes, it's mostly physical descriptions, but it works because it's efficient and it's exact. It gives the reader a clear feeling immediately of who this character is, especially given how it contrasts his surroundings. See, prisoners aren't supposed to look like this and they're not supposed to act like this. And then the script moves into behavior and interaction where the character becomes even more vivid and we begin to understand why he looks the way he does. So that's the difference. Physical description works best when it's tied to identity, attitude, danger, history, or some unique quality. Young woman in a t-shirt and jeans gives me almost nothing unless the t-shirt and jeans are telling me something highly specific. For example, if it's the prom and everyone is dressed to the nines and our main character strolls in t-shirt and jeans. Now, that's something we can sink our teeth into. Otherwise, it's just generic filler. Which leads us to our last tip. Be brief. This is the final piece, and it doesn't sound like much, but trust me, it matters a lot. A great character introduction should usually take up as few words as possible, maybe 1 or 2 lines. Occasionally a little more if the role is important and the intro really earns it. But the last thing you want to do is to write a novel inside your screenplay. Script readers move fast. If you stop the story for a giant paragraph every time someone appears, you're going to lose all of your momentum and you're going to kill your pace. And that means you're going to lose your reader. So land your character in a few well-chosen words and then let the scenes do the rest. See, we don't need to know everything about them, just enough to get a sense of who they are and become interested enough to want to know more, which leads me into what I call the blind date test. Now, this is something you can do with all of your character introductions. I always think of it like a blind date. If you were meeting this person for the first time, what would you notice before you got to know them? How do they carry themselves? How do they interact with others? What's their energy? What makes them stand out? That's where good character introductions live. On a blind date, you don't get someone's entire life story in the first 5 seconds. No, you get posture and eye contact and clothing, grooming, confidence, awkwardness, intelligence, the way they sit down, the way they fidget or sit still, the way they speak to you, the way they speak to the server. All of that creates an impression. Your screenplay should work in the same way. In fact, better. Because unless you're writing a date scene, chances are you'll be a lot more creative in your scenario and your character reactions to it. So the better you know your character's inner workings, the clearer the picture you can paint for your reader. That changes everything, because then the character starts to feel authentic and unique and specific and, let's be honest, difficult to replace. And that's what you want, not some generic stand-in. Young man 30s, beautiful woman 20s, tall guy in a suit. These are completely empty labels. They melt into the crowd. And once that happens, the character becomes forgettable before the story has even started. But when the intro tells us who this person is, even in a handful of words, well, the reader starts paying attention immediately. That character feels like somebody. And once that happens, their choices matter more. Think of Han Solo versus Luke Skywalker. If you were to describe both of them only physically, you'd wind up with something like young, male, lean, average build, light features. That might as well be the same guy. But now try Luke, 19, a wide-eyed farm boy aching for a bigger life. Han, 30, a fast-talking rogue who never stops scanning the room. Now, I didn't say anything about their appearance, and yet now we can see them. And I don't need a paragraph to do it. That's the trick. Be specific. So to recap, here are the 5 big tips. Introduce them before their dialogue, unless the reveal is meant to be a surprise. Lead with personality, because who they are matters more than generic clothing. Use their situation, because how they react tells us who they are. Use physical detail only when it matters, especially when it defines identity or uniqueness. And be brief, because a sharp impression beats a long paragraph every single time. So here's my takeaway. At the end of the day, strong character introductions come from one thing: knowing your characters well enough to describe them like real people. That means understanding who they are, how they move and talk, what they want, what they fear, what makes them different, and what kind of energy they bring into a room. Once you know that, the introduction becomes much easier and much better. It will help your characters stand out from the moment we meet them, which gets us invested enough to say, ooh, show me more. At least, those are my 2 cents. What are yours? Who's a movie character you think got introduced perfectly? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, please share it with someone you think might enjoy it too. So until next time, stay creative.